Howdy y'all, Stock Warden here, back with another video. And today we're looking over Archer Aviation, and we have quite a bit that has came through with Archer Aviation with their Q4 2025 results that have came through, and also a lot of new expansion that they are planning on doing for 2026. So as we know here, since 2026 has started, they have had a pretty rocky shot at trying to get the stock price up. So because the last time that they seen anything in specific that they were working on as far as trying to get the stock actually into a higher base was well back in October. So, and ever since October of 2025, it has just pretty much kind of been on a downhill trend from there. So, but the stock finally has started to, I guess you could say, level out somewhat, because they are testing a resistance line pretty heavy down here at the 670 to the 645 line. So you more or less can pop a string from probably 650 all the way across. So looking at about a 655 resistance line going all the way back to the beginning of this year. So they seem to be kind of standing tall on staying on top of that resistant line. And then they also have more or less been flooring on the top end of resistance, looking at your $7.55 a share. So if you bring the 755 across as well, you can see that there are peaks and valleys both on this 755 a share. So, but to kind of get into a good depth of some of the main points of what I'm going to be covering is that currently they are on track for piloted vertical takeoff and landing operations as a part of the White House's eVTOL integration pilot program and Archer's UAE commercial launch program as well. So they are targeting the first passenger carrying flights to be in 2026. So there will be, or should be, regular people using the eVTOL system in 2026. They have received final FAA acceptance of 100% on the means of compliance, which is making Archer the first to achieve this certification milestone for an eVTOL aircraft. So they truly did end up getting that passed on the FAA before Joby, which there has been a lot of mixed signals between Archer and Joby on the FAA's standpoint. So then you also have where they have expanded defense opportunities with multiple different uses with a hybrid aircraft program and powertrain sales. So they ended 2025 with record liquidity of $2 billion. So those are some of the major highlights into Archer Aviation going into 2026. So, but if you also take a point where Archer is growing its midnight fleet and expanding its flight test program, so the newest aircraft is now in its eVTOL flight test campaign and will work through progressively more advanced test points ahead of full piloted transition flight. So Archer is going to continue to expand this midnight fleet throughout 2026 because they see that it is their new golden ticket for the eVTOL systems, and with several aircraft in various stages of completion as well. So with its growing fleet, Archer is going to be more or less more on track of what they're projecting for piloted eVTOL operations, since the White House is still pushing for this eVTOL integration pilot program, which actually they had a huge push for them in the late 2025. So then we can turn around and talk about how Archer having the 100% FAA acceptance. So which that is meaning the means of compliance is the FAA agreed upon criteria by which Archer will demonstrate Midnight meets its airworthiness requirements. So completing the means of compliance unlocks Archer's ability to finalize the acceptance of its remaining certification plans with the FAA, and Archer expects those to be resolved in the coming quarters, clearing the path for type inspection authorization activities to begin on its Midnight program as soon as this year. So that is the next step and the next stage in the FAA process. So now that they'll be talking about finishing the means of compliance, then they'll get through the TIA, then they'll be able to go into the next set, which would be actually putting people on the plane and flying it with passengers and consumers on board. So then you also have Archer's partnership with Anduril is at the core of its defense strategy, kind of going back to their expanded defense opportunities and powertrain sales. So the two companies are designing an autonomous hybrid electric eVTOL aircraft, which will be built for dual use, being either defense or it being just a more or less an air taxi. So in November, Archer had announced its first third-party powertrain deal with Anduril and the UAE's Edge Group to power their Oman autonomous air vehicle, which is an example of how Archer's proprietary technologies can be adapted and sold for other applications. Archer also has announced its new UK engineering hub in Bristol, and that facility will primarily support Archer's local collaboration with Anduril UK and GKN. So, which initially focused on their joint work to support uncrewed vehicle programs in the UK. Now, as far as their earning results came in, they did fall short in 2025 on Q4. So they did miss expectations. Luckily, they didn't miss it by a whole lot. So they did have a lot of expenses. So their cash equivalents and short-term investments went over 1.9 million, which is an increase of 1.1 million from fiscal year 2024, and the highest quarter-ending liquidity watermark in Archer's history. The cash used in operating activities, is 432.9 million for fiscal year 2025. The cash used for investment in property and equipment is 78.8 million. Cash used for acquisitions is 152 million for the acquisition of Hawthorne Airport and lithium and over-air IP. So the cash provided by financing activities was 1.79 million for fiscal year 2025, and that's primarily driven by the 3 registered direct offerings with gross proceeds of about $1.8 billion. So their operating expenses obviously have increased drastically. Their operating costs have went from $219 million to $729 million as they continue investing in this development, testing, certifications, and different aspects of what Archer is doing, trying to build and vertically integrate within the company. Of course, you're going to end up with a lot more operating cost, which in this fact, they did it more than triple their operating cost. So their net loss had only risen by 81.4 million from fiscal year 2024 to a loss of 618 million, which was primarily driven by a 220 million increase in operating expenses. So, but that was offset by the 107.5 million decrease in non-cash charges within other income net interest. So they also have a 30.9 million increase in their interest income as well, and that's a net number, that's not a gross number. So their net loss increased by 59 million from Q3, and then they had a total loss of 188.9 million, which was driven primarily by the 59.9 million increase in operating expenses, which we had talked about earlier in the video with how they had started expanding to great lengths. So, but even though they missed the marker a little bit and the stock kind of suffered from it a little bit, we also had a couple of other smash hits as well, which is probably another reason why the stock is down, which after the Q4 results came in for all of 2025, Needham has maintained a buy on Archer Aviation, but they lowered their price target to $9 a share. Deutsche Bank has adjusted Archer Aviation's price target to $12 from $14, but they still show a buy rating as well. So it's a little bit off the edge where they're still saying that you should buy this stock even though they're having to lower the price target currently. But if you look at where this company is going and the direction that it's in, it's pretty clear to see that it would be a decent buy, especially with the close that we had on Tuesday, closing out at $6.72 a share, going from $6.72, say, to the $12 price target that Deutsche Bank is adjusting for, then that would still almost be a full 100% return on investment just on this stock alone. So that, and then with them being so far ahead with the FAA versus all the rest of the eVTOL companies, it really puts a pretty strong eye on Archer Aviation versus all of the other eVTOL programs that we have out there. So that's everything that I have on Archer Aviation for this week. I hope you all enjoyed the video and were able to get all the great information in from this company and stock of how they've been moving through, what the actual numbers were for all of 2025, plus the full forward-looking statement on what their achievable goal is for 2026 and not getting way too outlandish. So, with all that being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next video. So, this will be the Stock Warden riding off. See y'all come back now, you hear?